So who'd we narrow it down to? The one on the far right whispered to the man next to him. The billionaire ginger toupee with that hot trophy wife and the dykey-looking one with the misogynist ex-president husband, the other replied in a low tone. He snorted. How'd they manage to slip those two by the American populace? They've got even dumber since the last time, the one in the middle answered. He was the most powerful of the five. Now shush, they should be in any minute now. They all sat at a plastic Costco picnic table with a red and white plaid picnic sheet draped across the top. 10 plastic Dixie cups rested on the same table, 5 filled with water should any of them get thirsty, and the other 5 with urine, the latter of which had a use yet to be determined. 2 plastic pitchers held refills of each liquid. The world elites, the head honchos, the guys with all the money, the ones the conspiracy theorists referred to as the big bankers. These guys made the world go round, so to speak. They called the shots, they ran the show, they picked the world leaders. And that's what this is all about, picking the next world leader, the next POTUS, President of the United States. A soft knock came at the door, and in walked the 2 candidates. Hillary came through the door first. Her outfit, chosen for her by Mr. Rothschild's personal favorite fashion designer, had a Walmart shopper theme to it. A baggy shirt with an I'm with stupid logo plastered on the front and an arrow pointing upwards. Tie-dye yoga pants, at least 3 sizes too small. A pair of pink flip-flops so old they had to be duct taped together, and a hat with an American flag background and the words, Viva la Israel, painted across the front. To top the ensemble off, the same fashion designer gave her a Miss Piggy-inspired makeover, complete with pink nail polish and a generous serving of blue eyeshadow. She looked mortified and perhaps a slight bit angry, but she wouldn't dare to let it show any more than that. Next, in walked Donald Trump, the billionaire ginger toupee with the hot trophy wife. However, he didn't have his ginger toupee with him this time. No, instead he sported a neon purple horsehair piece done in cornrows. His outfit was an exact replica of Katy Perry's candy outfit in the California Girls music video, tailored to fit his full masculine form perfectly. He also wore fur gloves made from 100% drowned baby kitten fur, dyed purple. He had a big, dumb, fake smile plastered across his face, pretending to be happy as he waved hello to the men at the table. A round of snickers went around the small all-white room from the elite sitting at the judges' table. This was their favorite part of election time, the final debate that mattered. Larry, Dump, Mr. Shadow greeted them. That was the name the man in the middle went by, Mr. Shadow. Of course, he had another name, a real name, but what's the fun in telling you the name of the man who actually owns you? Greetings, Master Shadow. They both mimed. You know why you're here. The final debate. We're going to decide who the president is tonight. All the blood, sweat, tears, human sacrifice, ingested fecal matter, your dedication to the powers that be, it's all come to this final debate. Are you ready? Of course, the 2 candidates replied. Donald gave his most charming smile, a sad shadow of its intended effect. Hillary stood proud and stern-faced, as if the utterly ridiculous ensemble she sported were regal clothing and she a queen deserving the highest respect. Of the 2, she was not off to a good start. Pride was for people who deserved it, not would-be presidents. We change the game for every new election so that it's never the same. We don't want previous candidates spilling all the beans for the next ones, so George here is going to explain the rules to you. Right, piped up the aged banker. There will be 3 rounds, each with their own set of rules. The first round is a simple set of questions regarding events that are going to take place during the media coverage of the elections in 2016. We simply want you to answer the questions. Mr. Soros fell silent, seemingly finished with his short explanation. He looked as if he might have been about to fall asleep. That's all? Hillary asked, wringing her hands nervously. What about the other rounds? What? Huh? Oh, he whipped his drooping head up. No, that's not all. The judges will throw urine every time one of you gives an inadequate answer. The loser of the round also has to drink a cup of urine. Whoever gets the most cups of urine thrown at them loses the round. Don't worry about the other rounds just yet. Are you ready? Donald licked his lips and nodded eagerly. Hillary clenched her fists at her sides and gave a single sharp nod. All right then, Mr. Shadow beamed, let's begin. The first question is for Larry. During the process of the election, we're going to give Mr. Assange access to your private email server. Pretty much everything you've ever done over the last decade is going to be made public. How are you going to handle that? Hillary choked on her spit. What? How can I possibly win the election? In answer, Nathaniel Rothschild, the real-life inspiration for The Simpsons' Mr. Burns, threw a cup of urine at her. She squealed in surprise as the yellow liquid blasted her in the face. Her mouth had already been hanging open in surprise, so when it got in her mouth, it just added to the amusement. Yes, the judges got a good long laugh out of that one. We want answers, Hillary, not a question. Questions are our business. She stammered and spat, struggling with barely contained rage and shock. Donald, next to her, was grinning ear to ear, clearly enjoying how events were unfolding thus far. When she still hadn't answered, Mr. Rockefeller said, "Would you like another cup, Hillary, or do you want to answer the question?" Answer, she nodded sharply, and then proceeded to do just that. The details of her answer are not so important as to go into her actual words. She planned on blaming the Russians, flat out denying they were her emails, accusing Trump of working with the Russians to slander her. All inadequate answers, really. The judges weren't happy with her in the end, and so she got another cup of urine to the face. She was not happy, but who could blame somebody who looked like a Walmart shopper and now smelled like one too? Anyway, next it was Donald's turn to answer questions. The judges quietly consulted among one another, deciding on which question to ask him. They never really prepared for these election things. They had more important stuff to do than to worry about who was going to be the next face of America. They eventually came up with a question, while Donald patiently waited with a confident, witless grin. All right, Dump, Mr. Shadow finally broke the silence. We're going to leak those photos your wife did for that Italian erotica magazine a couple decades back. How are you going to handle that with the media? Oh, wow, he exclaimed. I forgot about those. Those were hot, weren't they? See, now Dump failed to learn from Hillary's mistake. He got his first face full of urine, but he did at least manage to keep his mouth shut. Oh, ha, he cackled. Forgot not to answer a question with a question. I'll be sure not to make that Mr. Rothschild threw another cup at him on account of his talking. Mid-sentence, this time he did get it in his mouth. Answer the question, Dump. Well, he responded, sober and serious, licking his lips. I think I would just ignore it, brush it off, you know. We all have our wild days, and my wife was just going through those times, you know. No need to get all up in arms about it, folks. You know, David Rockefeller responded, the vast majority of your voters are going to be the religious sort. They won't stand for that, will they? No, Trump ducked his head sheepishly. No, they won't. Inadequate answer. They emptied another cup in his face. And so it went this way. They each answering questions in this manner. An hour passed. The trigger-happy judges, so to speak, were having so much fun throwing urine that in the end, Hillary had 13 cups thrown at her and Donald got a whopping 23, clearly marking him the loser of the round. They even had to ring the bell on 3 separate occasions to get urine refills in their pitchers. Where did it come from, you ask? Who knows? Donald took the loss like a good sport, though, don't you Republican voters worry. And he kept his chin up and his big dumb smile broad. He even pretended to like the cup of urine he had to drink for losing. And so this brings us to round 2. Mr. Shadow rang the bell. The door opened immediately and a hooded servant garbed in a long black robe with a red sash walked in. We're ready for round 2. The servant bowed without saying a word. He returned a few moments later with 2 pairs of boxing gloves. Donald smiled broadly and shook his fist. Hillary's short-lived euphoria from her first round victory turned to a shocked disbelief. A boxing match? A boxing match! That's not fair, I know, but these are the true real world leaders, and so they get to make the rules. We just have to put up with it. Now, there are a great many underdog stories out there in the world. We see them all the time in the cinemas. The Rocky series alone beat that dead horse 6 times over. 7 if you count the one about Apollo's son. This definitely isn't one of those stories, though. Round 2 was much shorter than the first, all of 3 minutes and not much more. Trump pummeled Clinton good and right. He smeared her makeup, he bruised her face, and he even broke one of her ribs. At the end of it, Trump raised his boxing gloves in glorious victory, having dominated his opponent in a true landslide fashion like a young Ali. Never mind he fought an old lady, he still won, and that's what matters. Hillary lay on the ground, unconscious, smelling of urine and looking like poo. After a few moments, she moaned piteously. Were this another room and other men, there might have been sympathy for her. But these were men who cared only about their own power, Dump included. She got up on shaky hands and knees, fighting a wave of dizziness. She looked a bit confused as to where she was and what had happened. But when she saw the judges and Dump, she couldn't help but scowl. "Oh boy," Nathaniel exclaimed. 1 and 1, it's a tie. That means round 3, the big finale. The other judges snickered evilly. What came next must surely be the worst yet, or so the nominees thought. Mr. Shadow felt around in his pockets for a few moments and frowned. He leaned forward, looking left and right. "Do any of you happen to have a quarter?" They all began fumbling about their suit pockets in search of a quarter. They came up empty one by one, shaking their heads at Mr. Shadow as they did. He took up the little golden bell and gave it a ring. In walked the black-garbed servant. He bowed and waited silently, just as he had been doing. "You don't happen to have a quarter, do you?" asked Mr. Shadow. "Or any coin for that matter?" The servant reached beneath the billowing folds of his robe. There was a slight jingle as he fumbled about in his pockets. Sure enough, he pulled his hand out, and with it a shiny silver dollar. He approached the plastic picnic table and set it reverently on Mr. Shadow's outstretched hand. "Thank you, Ted." The man bowed and left the room. "All right, Larry and Dump, here we are, the last and final round. This decides it all. Who's going to be the next president of the United States? Are you ready?" Donald nodded vigorously. Hillary only gave a slight tilt of the head, but she had a determined look on her face, ready for what came next. "Good then. Let's begin. Heads or tails, Larry?" Hillary blinked. Excuse me? Heads or tails? Are we leaving the decision of the next United States president to a coin toss?" The judges all chuckled heartily. They thoroughly enjoyed the look of dismay and outrage on her face. Donald looked a bit perturbed too, but he kept his dim-witted smile in place. "And why shouldn't we, Larry?" Because you'll do such a better job than Dump here." "You won't. You'll do the same job. You'll listen. You'll obey. Win or lose, that's all you'll do. That's all you've ever done. It doesn't matter who's in the actor's chair. We've already narrowed it down to the 2 of you. It doesn't make much of a difference at this point. Quite honestly, it doesn't matter to us. This is all fun and games." "For us anyway," chuckled Mr. Soros. Mr. Shadow held the coin up for them to see. Then he turned it and turned it again so they could see both sides. "You're 2 sides of the same coin, and that coin belongs to me. Now," he paused, smiling a sinister smile, "heads or tails?" Her lip quivered, part anger, part fear, part disappointment. She bowed her head and did defeat. Even though she hadn't necessarily lost, at least not yet. "Heads," she sighed. Mr. Shadow flipped the coin, and just like that, the United States of America got its next president.